Hey everybody, welcome back. I am back on my computer that allows me to record, so I do have a video up for you today. Here is the agenda that you can see on the screen. Today is Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. Hopefully I'm going to keep the announcements pretty short today, but nothing much has changed the last couple of days. We're still waiting on some official announcements from the state to see how grading is going to move going forward. Most likely, the grades will be able to be entered within the week, this week, which means I can get all that hard work you've been doing and put them into the grade book. And then obviously work not being done will not help you and will not boost your grade or anything like that. I also want to start getting some extra credit assignments out going forward as well. Realizing again that this is a unique time, that there's going to be days that just don't work very well. For instance, yesterday or on Monday, we had Easter at my mother and father's house, and we decided to spend the night that night. And I didn't have my school computer, so I mean, it wasn't the best video that I could do. So, but that just goes to show you that we just tried our best each and every day, and that's all I can expect from you moving forward. So we're going to get back to the traditional way that I've been doing things. Just again, a reminder that on Wednesday, we will have Zoom for English specifically. That will be on Wednesday from 10 to 12. And I'm just going to kind of open up in there, maybe read Telltale Heart. Maybe we can watch the video version of it. Like, we can do all sorts of things that way. So people can come in and they can also get any assistance they may need. So if you're having trouble with your iPad or anything, so you can let me know there. So that's it for announcements. I'm sure you're sick of the announcements. They usually run a little bit longer anyway, so we'll just get started today. So yeah, there was no DLP yesterday, but today we'll go ahead and start it. It will be labeled DLP number 3, and you can see it here on the screen in front of you for Tuesday 4/14. So you'll have 4. We'll do one on Friday as well. So we will have 4 days of the DLP. We'll do a small writing thing on Friday for this. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and copy that down onto your blank sheet of paper, and then we'll come back and do the corrections. So the corrections here, it says number 1, us girls both started to speak at the same time. We saw the driver and wrote down the license plate. Number 2, Emily said. So us girls, that doesn't, I mean, you might say that if you're talking to friends and stuff like that, but in the academic sense, we don't want to say us girls. There's a word that is perfect for that. You just put we, right? That's what we means. Okay, so we both started to speak at the same time. Put that quotation there. We both started to speak at the same time. I would say we put a period here, capitalize the W here. We saw the driver and wrote down the license plate number 2. So after the number goes a comma. This is the correct version of 2, T-O-O. You need to put a quotation mark there. You need to capitalize the E in Emily, and then a period after said. All right, so instead of saying us girls, you just say simply we both started to speak at the same time. Academically speaking, the most straightforward way to get your point across is usually the best way. So us girls, that's 5, 6, 7 letters. And instead, we can say the exact same thing with 2 letters with we. And that's usually what we want to do when it comes to academic writing. That's not to say we don't want to use words that are shorter when other words might be better. But when they mean exactly the same thing, we want to always use the shorter, more to the point version of what is being said. Number 2, her and me will talk to the police, and they'll want to know about everything. Everything we seen, Laura stated. Okay, so this is again an example of, if you want this to make sense without trying to memorize rules and stuff like that, just take out the and part. So would you ever say her will talk to the police? You would never say her will talk to the police. You would say she will talk to the police. So we do need to change that to she. And this is a quote, so we'll put our quotation marks there. And you would never say me will talk to the police. You would say I will talk to the police. So I goes at the beginning. If you want to know the rule, the I and the she version of the pronouns or he always go at the start, and me and her and him will always go at the end of a sentence. But if you don't want to memorize it, you can always just do this. Oh, take out that part. Would it make sense? She will talk to the police. Yes, that makes sense. I will talk to the police. That makes sense. And then it always goes in that order where you put I after the person. So she and I will talk to the police. Let's put a period there. They will. That's fine. You can say they will with an apostrophe for they'll. They'll want to know about everything we seen. So although that might sound okay if you were saying it really quickly to a friend, it's not academically correct. So they'll want to know about everything we had seen. So the had, it needs to go in there. Then we'll need to put a comma, quotation marks, capitalize the L, and put a period at the end of our sentence. Okay, am I still recording? I am. Where'd that thing go? Disappeared. All right, there's your DLP for today. Let's go back to our agenda. So reading log, I did start one yesterday. So reading log number 3, it's simply an objective summary. So give me 5 sentences about the 20 pages that you read during your reading time. You'll take a picture of that and submit it on Friday. So if you want to pause the video and do that now, or if you want to do it after, that's fine. But that's what we would normally be doing in class. And then number 4, we're going to go over the assignment from Monday. We're going to talk a little bit about what I was hoping that you would be able to do with that prompt, and then hopefully give you a chance to rewrite and create a final draft. This is something that could definitely be into an essay, 5-6 paragraph total. I don't want to spend all the time doing that. So we're not going to really worry about an introduction or a conclusion. And we're just going to kind of shorten this to be a solid 2 paragraph response to that question. It really shows you that the essay, the most important part are those body paragraphs, and then the intro and the conclusion are kind of like the formalities of the paper, where you need to have your thesis, maybe you have a hook, and maybe you introduce the story from the author and the title of the book, and the conclusion is sort of the same thing. Like those things, I'm confident that you'll be able to do, and it takes a lot less time for us to go over 2 paragraphs than if we had to go over 5 paragraphs. But this is definitely a topic that you could see perhaps on a final exam or a midterm or something like that in high school, or even in college. You would have something like this, like here's one response, and then you have to write your paper on that. Okay, so let me go back to Google Classroom. There it is. It is recording. There you go. Okay, so when we go back to our Google Classroom, you'll see the prompt from yesterday. So the prompt was, how does Edgar Allan Poe use the sense of hearing during his story of The Telltale Heart? Use specific examples from the story to support your claim. All right. There is probably a few of you that looked at this prompt and were immediately kind of blanking on how to start, where to begin with a response to this. And that's perfectly natural. This isn't something that you could just say, oh yeah, hearing and that sense of hearing. I know exactly what that means. Let me write about this instantly without looking back at the story. This is something that you need to find the evidence first before actually doing any sort of writing on your own. And so I'll show you what I mean by that. And then finally, the other thing is to, when you answer this question, be sure to reword it as if the prompt was your own words. So instead of saying, how does Edgar Allan Poe use the sense of hearing? You could say, Edgar Allan Poe uses the sense of hearing during Telltale Heart 2, and then that's how you can have your thesis statement. That goes back to our RACES model that we were doing right before we kind of went on the hiatus or the break from school. Remember to reword the question, reword the prompt, answer, cite evidence, and then explain your evidence. It's really that simple. And writing doesn't have to be difficult if you follow that straightforward to the book formula, and you'll be fine. Okay, so let's talk about what I was hoping you would be doing on this. You hopefully have some of it down already. I wanted you to try this on your own first. This is something that I would have given you that prompt and then given you maybe 20, 25 minutes in class to finish. So this won't make much sense if you haven't done that. So please pause the video now if you have not done those 2 paragraphs and answer that response to the best of your ability. I'm not going to check this. I'm not going to give you points for the rough draft. I will give you points for the final draft. But what I don't want to do is have you write this only one time. I really want you to write this the first time as a rough draft for us to go over it, discuss. It's not really a discussion, but this is my style here. And then get you to have a final draft after you revise and edit what you did initially or first. So at this moment, if you have not done that, you need to pause the video and do that, and then come back to this part and continue on. So if you're now listening to this, you should have 2 paragraphs out either on your Google document or on a piece of paper, wherever you did it. All right. So the first thing, like I said earlier in this video, was that you should not write anything down before getting evidence from the story. You don't want to say, oh, you know what? I think Edgar Allan Poe uses the sense of hearing to make you feel comfortable. And let me go find evidence from that in The Telltale Heart, because you should not feel comfortable hearing that, reading this story. And the sense of hearing especially, it will not make you feel comfortable. But if you try to fit in evidence that supports what you're saying, you might see it that way. So what we want to do is, okay, we're looking for the sense of hearing. Let's go back to our story and try to find times where Edgar Allan Poe is using the sense of hearing. So you've already read this one time through. I even gave you the YouTube video where you can have it read to you. We've read in Amplify, we've also had an artist rendition, or the artist's interpretation of what was happening and being it read to you. So theoretically, you've read this 2 or 3 times. You wouldn't need to read this all again if that were the case. You just need to kind of skim through this and look for areas where the sense of hearing is being used. And it's not the longest story either. It's only 18 paragraphs. So we should be able to skim through this pretty quickly. Okay, so we know the first paragraph is him talking to us. Not a lot of sense of hearing in that paragraph. Paragraph 2, again, giving you a little bit of background. I wouldn't say you really get anything too much with the hearing until he starts to have some action happening, right? Because if he's thinking about stuff, he's trying to explain to you why he is not insane, why he had the urge to do this. These are kind of like memories. We're not going to have a sense of hearing when it comes to memory. So when we actually start having actions happen during the story, that's when you're going to get the sense of hearing. Okay, so for instance, opening the door, right? He is pitch black, so we have the sense of sight here. And for the shutters to close, fear of robbers, I think I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept it pushing steadily and steadily. So this is all sense of sight. And then when we go in, we have our first real sense of sound. Okay, so here it is. The old man sprang up in the bed, crying out, "Who's there?" And this is where your sense of hearing comes in, because you could, who's there, if you don't have this word, crying, nothing's disturbing or weird about that. Who's there? Something like that. You might even say that every time someone knocks on your door, it gets scared. But when it's used as a crying out, you get that sense of hearing. So this is one example that you could maybe pull into your essay if you have, if you wanted to check what you have versus some of the options out there. Then look at what happens here. I kept still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle. Now, this hopefully reminds you about how we started out our imagery when we talked about silence. Okay, so I kept still and said nothing. Just because sound is not actively happening doesn't mean that we aren't getting a feeling from it, right? Because you could probably imagine this old man asking who's there and then getting us an answer of silence for at least an hour, because he didn't move a muscle for an hour. So that eerie silence. You heard something before, and now you hear nothing, but you're really, really listening, and you still hear nothing. So this is also another example that you can use into there. Again, this is all you need to do is kind of scan through the paragraphs here. Presently, I heard. All right, boom, sense of hearing again. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. All right, it was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul. All right, this is all wonderful sense of hearing that Poe is using. It's the cry out, the groan, the slight groan where you just know something bad, because mortal terror means like that's it for you. That's the end of your life, and you can imagine what that might sound like. Okay, if you wanted to scroll down even a little bit later, he even says stuff about his own hearing here. So you have his own senses. Now that I have told you, now have I not told you what your mistake in madness is, but over acuteness of the senses. Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch making when enveloped in cotton. Okay, so here's more sense of hearing. The fact that he is the narrator has an extreme sense of hearing. He has very acute or extreme sharpness when it comes to hearing. He can hear everything, perhaps even things that are not actually making sounds. Like, we know the old man's heart is beating, and if you can listen to it with a stethoscope, yes, you could hear it, but no one, at least human-wise, should be able to hear someone's heart from across the room. So this is another sense. Well, the sense of hearing here, the author says is happening. We know as witnesses and bystanders here that that is not possible. So remember, he's saying, I'm not mad, I am not insane. And yet here, the fact that he's claiming to hear a heartbeat from across the room, you can gather that, yeah, he might be a little insane. So I don't want to go over every sense of hearing that's used here. These are just a couple of things that I would start with. You notice I haven't written anything, right? If I were to have my essay, it would be blank. It would be like this. But going over what I've done, I really, really like this idea that he thinks he can hear a lot. So what I would do is copy this. I wonder if I can do this. Paste it here. I can't. So I would copy that link and then I would work around that. Okay, so in my, let me get organized here. Okay, so I want this to be one of my quotations that I would to use. Okay, so this is going to be difficult to do, isn't it? There we go. Okay, so I haven't written anything. I just want to find evidence. And remember, when we were talking about this, it was about the fact that he thinks he can hear something that is not possible, which actually proves he is actually indeed mad. This is a huge statement by Poe as the author. And let's say, when I look back here, I really, that mortal terror, I really think that was something that I can use in my essay too. So I would copy that. I would go back to my essay and boom. So this is literally how I would do these essays if I were back in school, and how I was doing them throughout high school and in college. It's not about writing something here and then trying to find evidence that supports what you already wrote, because it may or may not be true. Yeah, you might get lucky. You might really have a good understanding of the story and what the author is trying to do, and you get lucky. But oftentimes you're going to be off. And so the only way to guarantee that you're not off is to pick the pieces of evidence you want to use, pull them out, and then read them, get familiar with them, and explain them in your own words that way. Okay? And when you're writing your essay, you don't want the quote to be the first thing. You don't want to have something like, there is a, It's bothering me here. I want to make sure. Go back to my Times New Roman, size 12, bang. And I don't want any highlights. Where are my highlights? Okay, that's fine, whatever. Oh, wait, no, this is it. Okay, so I wouldn't want to say something like, there is a quote that says, comma, and then here's my quote, right? I wouldn't want to do something like that. I'm going to also make this a little larger so you can see it. Okay, this quote, there is a quote that says, and now I have told you, right? You need to put a little bit of context about where the quote comes from before you introduce it. Okay, so this is about the introduction. So your first sentence should be, similar to what we were talking about, rewording the prompt. Okay, so reword the prompt. I'll put that in brackets here for you. So when we reword the prompt, and we're going to answer it. Okay, so the prompt, if you go back to your Google Classroom, is how is he using the sense of hearing during the story? So just again, reword that into your own words. Edgar Allan Poe uses the sense of hearing by, and then, okay, so I have my quote, by showing that, by showing something like that. So Edgar Allan Poe uses a sense of hearing by showing the narrator to actually be insane. This is clear, or I would use the word evident, during paragraph, and you just look back at where the paragraph was. I actually forgot off the top of my head. Paragraph 10, right? That's where it's from. In paragraph 10, when Poe writes, comma, boom. Okay. Then you finish the quote. You tell me where it was from, which is 10, and then a period there. Okay. So here I've reworded the prompt. I've introduced it and then actually put the quote there. And now what I would do is explain it in my own words. Something, again, like I don't want to write this whole thing out for you, but I would say something along the lines as if the narrator thinks that he hears something which is impossible to hear. Therefore, we, the audience, can assume the man actually is suffering from insanity or madness, even though he is believing to himself not be insane. So that's what I would write in my own words. And that's pretty much it for that paragraph, right? That's all you would need to do. Then you kind of follow that same style, that same formula again with this second quote that you did. And then that's your 2 paragraphs. And really, after that, you would have an intro, right? You would have a hook statement with your mentioning the author's name and the story, and then your thesis. Then you would have your paragraph here. You'd have your paragraph here. Then you can have your conclusion where you wrap up everything, and boom, you have a well thought out essay that would be meeting every standard for middle school and high school for sure as you move forward. So hopefully this makes some sense to you, and I want you to try again your second and final draft on that 2 paragraph response to that question of how he uses the sense of hearing. And then what I'll do is, in fact, you can even watch me do it. I will create the classwork here, and what you'll do, you actually won't see it on your end until, well, you might, because the video will be released. Okay, so your final draft 2 paragraph response. Okay, please upload through, and I would like you to make a Google Doc for this. Please do not take a picture of your rough draft. That was just for your own ease. I do want the final to be typed up. Okay. This is a good time to also talk about, I'm going to assign it here, schedule. 8 a.m. Okay, so that'll be released to you guys tomorrow at 8 o'clock. And that's what I'll expecting to be done for Tuesday. Okay, so that will, I mean, I guess Wednesday is when it's due, but this is your assignment for today. What else? I had one other thing I wanted to say. Oh yes, the format. Okay, so I'm gonna erase all of this. Okay, so whatever you're on, it doesn't matter. Let's say you get, this is your default settings. Okay, so when you're on Google Document, again, it's going to be similar to Word. It won't be exact. In fact, it's probably better if I actually open up a Google document. So let's open up a Google Doc for you. Do this one. So again, writing essays, I think, is pretty difficult on your iPads. I get it if that's the only thing you have, but if you do have access to a laptop or a computer, I think it's always better, and it's probably best to get used to that. Very rarely, I think, in high school and in college, you're going to actually be required to type an essay on an iPad. If anything, you'll be required to type it on your Chromebook or laptop. So when you get into your document, again, I'm going to go quick because we've talked about this. Times New Roman, size 12. You're going to shift all the way to the right align. You're going to put your name. You're going to put today's date. Oops, I have my num lock off. That's what the problem is. Okay, you're going to put today's date. However you like to do it, you can write it out. You can do 4-14-2020. Doesn't matter. And then usually you'll have periods. So period, let's say 2, whatever you might be in. Press enter one more time and then center align. Okay, so here's your right, here's your center, here's your left. Make sure it's center aligned. Then your title, it doesn't matter if you know your title or not. You can just put untitled, whatever, and then you can come back and change it when you're ready. But you need to have that underline, bold, size 14. Okay, press enter one more time. Go to the left aligned. Okay, unbold it, ununderline it, size 12, and don't forget to indent. I think that's really the number one reason to do typing on a laptop rather than an iPad or your phone or whatever, because there is no tab button, and the tab button is huge because you need to indent your paragraphs. It's really annoying to have to space out over and over again. So it's enter, enter, okay, bold, size 12, and then don't forget to go to the left, and every sentence in a new paragraph needs to be indented, which is, again, the brilliance of it. So whatever it might be, bam, 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 bam. Every time you have a new paragraph, enter. Now, of course, this is single space. We don't want that. You don't want to highlight everything. You just want to highlight your writing up to here. And then you do want to go to your spacing, which is line spacing here. Double space it, and there's a perfectly formatted essay. Okay, and then, oh, hey, you know what? I have figured out the title. It's Poe Likes to Hear. Okay, and another reminder is that every word needs to be capitalized in your title. So hopefully that makes sense. This is, again, what I had have done in college and in high school, and it was the format. If the teacher didn't give a format, that always passed the test, and it's my particular format that I would prefer for you turning in work. And I still see lots of students struggling to make their papers look like this, so a friendly reminder on how to get that done. All right, that's going to do it for today. Go ahead and get that 2-paragraph response done and get ready to turn it in on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we'll do a no red ink. We'll turn that in, some DLPs, and reading log stuff on Wednesday, okay? So stay safe. Stay indoors if you can. Hopefully the sun will start coming out a little bit more. We do want the weather to start getting hotter that is known to really have an effect on the virus. So in addition to us practicing our social distancing, being smart, realizing that we're helping everybody, not just ourselves, but everybody by staying indoors, plus the weather heating up, I think we might have some good news moving forward. So anyway, that's it for today. Again, if you have questions, let me know, email me, or use the Remind app. I will be available tomorrow for one-on-one instruction. If you need it, you gotta just text me on Remind, and I can pop on really quick from around 10 to 12 in that range. And we can go from there. Otherwise, get your work done, and we will talk to you soon.